We are back with a fresh new edition of Climate Clock where we discuss everything sustainability and climate change. Focus today will be on real estate space. A Forbes report suggested that we have nearly 40% of global carbon dioxide emissions coming in from the real estate sector. Of these emissions, approximately 70% are produced by building operations while the remaining 30% comes from construction. In this scenario, real estate industry is moving towards ensuring sustainable and green buildings. Mahindra Lifespaces has launched its residential project, Mahindra Eden in Bengaluru, which is India's first net zero energy residential project. Mahindra Lifespaces will be building only net zero buildings from 2030 onwards. We are now joined by Arvind Subramanian, who is the MD and CEO of Mahindra Lifespaces, to discuss this and the move towards green real estate as well. Mr. Subramanian, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
My pleasure, Sonal, and thanks for having me on the Climate Clock.
Well, that's the first question. For the benefit of our viewers, I'd like to understand what would a net zero building mean? How are you ensuring the balance between emissions and what you are removing in terms of those emissions?
Yes, that's a very important question. So firstly, let me put this in context. We as a developer have had a 100% green certified portfolio for many years now, since 2014 actually. So moving to net zero was in some ways a natural evolution of that commitment, but in many ways is actually a giant leap. What we've done with Mahindra Eden in Bengaluru, which we've launched recently, is to get to net zero energy. There are two other dimensions of net zero, which is net zero water and net zero waste. And I'll come back to those later. But firstly, with net zero energy, the idea is how can we make the project, so three aspects to this. One, how do we reduce the demand for energy in residential projects by using design interventions and good materials that are responsive to climate, less thermal radiation, etc. The second step is then of the energy that is still needed, how much can we generate through renewable energy on site, and the rest can we buy green power from the grid. So those are the three steps we've gone through to make this India's first net zero energy project. So just to give you some numbers, we've been able to reduce the energy consumption by about 33% from a conventional building, a comparable conventional building. We will generate about 5 to 10% of the remaining energy from a combination of solar and wind power on site, and the rest will be purchased as green power from the grid.
Okay. So, but you were also mentioning about the three aspects, right? You spoke about how net zero water or net zero waste disposal, those would be the other aspects, right? So once the building is made and we've ensured that, yes, we are using green energy via renewable sources, what after that? How do we continue to ensure that sustainability exists even after the building is made?
And that's the holy grail, and I must admit that it's a problem we still are grappling with. So, state of the art for us today is we've got to about 76% reduced water dependency from external sources, and we are able to recycle about 90% of the waste. So we're still not at 100% on those two parameters of water and waste. But as you pointed out, as you led into the show, we have made a public pledge that by 2030, all new buildings that we construct from 2030 onwards will be entirely net zero, so including energy, water, and waste. So these are difficult problems, but they are worthy of the effort that's being put behind.
Oh yes, that I would definitely agree with. So in that case, sir, what more, according to you, needs to be done in the sector as a whole to ensure green real estate, and what are the risks associated with it? Those pledges or the targets that you have maintained, do you think there are certain risks associated with it and it could take more time because of that?
So look, I think the direction is clear, and as your show is aptly called, the clock is ticking down. So there's no turning back. If anything, we have to find ways to accelerate our path towards green real estate. Now, as we think about green real estate, one has to think comprehensively about the entire circularity of the building and construction business. So not only how do you construct and operate real estate assets in a green manner, but also when they come to end of life, how do you dispose of the debris? So construction waste and debris management is a huge problem to tackle. Fortunately, India is at a stage of its investment and build out of real estate where if one were to fast forward to 2050, 70% of the buildings that we will require by 2050 still need to be built. So in many ways, we have a clean canvas to paint on. And if we do it right from now onwards, we should be in a much better shape in the coming decades.
Oh, yes, I totally agree. So you did give me some figures with respect to waste disposal. You have not been able to reach the 100% mark when it comes to water positivity as well. Anything that we can hear in the near future, the targets, if we talk about the 100% mark?
One of the challenges we have in residential real estate in particular, and let me talk about two challenges. One, eventually this asset is managed by the Resident Welfare Association or society. So one has to design projects in a way or products in a way where the management does not become onerous. Unlike a commercial office asset or a factory asset, where you know who's going to manage the asset going forward, and therefore one can think about a heavy approach to managing the sustainable operations part of the life cycle. In a residential asset, it almost has to be self-sustainable, and that's the additional complexity. The second area is it is very location dependent. So Bangalore lends itself beautifully to a project which is net zero energy because of the wonderful climate that Bangalore is blessed with. Trying to replicate the same thing in a different city, maybe a Pune or a Mumbai, poses a different level of challenges. So we will have to discover the right solutions and the right toolkit for each location and each kind of project.
Interesting. An important point out there. So last question before we let you go, and it is for the home buyers. Are green homes costlier? What would it mean for the home buyer as a whole?
I would urge home buyers to think about this from a life cycle cost perspective. And again, let me share some numbers. So for Mahindra Eden, we did the math, and it turns out that you end up saving, an owner or a resident will end up saving about 50 rupees per square foot per year on maintenance cost because of the net zero energy features. Now, it seems like a small amount, but 50 rupees at today's interest rates, so let's say a fixed deposit interest rate of about 5%, is equivalent to 1,000 rupee capital cost reduction. That is substantial. Most buyers would sit across a table, negotiate for hours on end for 100 or 200 rupee capital cost reduction. Here is an opportunity to save 1,000 rupees of capital cost per square foot.
Okay. Mr. Subramanian, thank you so much for joining us and speaking with us about the first net energy building that has come in from Mahindra Lifespaces. It's a great initiative and wish you all the success with the future endeavors as well. Thanks a lot for joining us on
Thank you, Sonal. We need all the luck.
All right, that's the word coming in from Mahindra Lifespaces. And with that, it's curtains down on this edition of Climate Clock. Do stay tuned for the other updates.